Hello, I'm Toycat and welcome back to the second channel geography video. This is our series where we talk about geography and the world and stuff. And this is where I live. It is planet Earth. You're probably familiar with it, but you're also probably familiar with the fact that we usually divide this into 7 continents. Some people divide it into 6 continents, but some people are wrong, and that's a-okay. The great thing about continents is they help you by dividing the world into geographic regions that all have a little bit of culture attached to them. I mean, you can understand that because this is Europe, people from there are Europeans, who are different from people from Asia, who are Asians. Then there are Africans, there are North Americans, South Americans, and then it gets confusing because the widespread English name for this one is Australia, but Australians are people from the country Australia, not the continent. So then there are people from Australia who are called Australasians or whatever. So this is the 6 continents, plus there are the penguins on this one, but these are the 6 continents we're talking about today, because although this is a great starting point, the truth is, once you understand geography, you know that continents are very arbitrary, and you might think they're great geographic terms that really help you understand the different land masses, but Europe, Asia, and Africa are all connected anyway. You can see that very clearly, even on this map right here, and South America and North America are also linked by land, naturally speaking, and so if we're gonna be, if we're gonna be using continents that aren't really so accurate anyway and are based on culture, because again, Europe and Asia is a cultural divide we decided by these mountains and by this area here. Africa and Asia is a cultural divide we decided by the Middle East to Egypt, and because of that, South America and North America, Panama versus Colombia is the dividing line where it magically goes from one to the other, and if we're using inaccurate continents anyway, we might as well better understand these subcontinents, because every, especially when it comes to the map of the world and all these continents, you might think they're pretty equal when we say there are 7 continents, but obviously we know the penguin continent is less equal than the others, but also it's worth mentioning that even just alone, it's worth, again, if there's one thing you need to know from this video, it's that more than almost 60% of the world's population lives in Asia alone. I live on the 3rd most populated continent, and only fewer than 10% of people live here actually, and because of that, it's like, well, it seems a bit unfair to just say Asia and blob all of this, again, to blob 60% of the world's population into one label, and so in today's video, I figured it would be useful if we at the very least divided Asia, because this subcontinent is a widely known term, but today I wanted to go through all of the subcontinents, and let's do precisely that, shall we? What are all of the world's subcontinents? Let's start with the obvious one, because when we say the subcontinent, in fact, it's like a globally accepted term, the subcontinent refers to the Indian subcontinent, which is, again, a grouping of countries that are very different to the rest of Asia, and obviously those countries are India, usually included are Pakistan and Bangladesh, and then Bhutan, Nepal, sometimes Myanmar/Burma, and then usually Sri Lanka and sometimes the Maldives. This is the historical map, by the way. I prefer the geographic-based map because this one helps you kind of understand that it's really 6 different regions. In fact, again, this helps you really get that, like, if you divide Asia into huge regions, again, basically the size of continents, you get north, east, south, west, and central, but as well as having to have those, you need to distinguish enough between south and east that there is Southeast Asia. That is the crazy granularity we really need, because Southeast Asia is so different from Eastern Asia, which is so different from the south of Asia, but we're getting ahead of ourselves. Let's talk about South Asia. South Asia, is what most people are referring to in the UK when they say Indian. This is a fun cultural thing that, like, even though, again, the term Asian should refer to anyone from here, in reality, if you are from the UK, again, someone who is from Asia usually refers to someone from here. People say that I mention this in every video, so let's mention it again. My grandmother is from Sri Lanka, so my grandmother is from Asia. If my grandma was from the Philippines, I'd say, oh yeah, my grandma's from the Philippines instead, for instance. And that's kind of confusing because in the United States of America, when people refer to Asians, as you can see from the current political situation revolving Asians, which is a way too broad term in my opinion, but that's how American media works. Basically, they're referring to Chinese people or Koreans or Japanese people, sometimes Filipinos, and sometimes all of Southeast Asia is included. And if you're going really broad, Asians will refer to sometimes the South Asians as well, but usually not. Usually that's like a whole separate thing. But this is what people refer to when they say Asia in the United States. Sometimes Usually it's just east or just east and southeast though. But in reality, there are a lot of other people from Asia, including Russia, the world's largest country. These, again, it's such a big country that like North Asia basically refers to it by itself. Sometimes also Armenia, Azerbaijan, and Georgia. But like this is North Asia. It is the biggest part of Asia by land area, and it's also kind of the least populated in terms of just sheer amount of people there. It is very different to the rest because, honestly, climate is the biggest reason. If we look at it on a satellite map, it's very cold. Yeah, it's the satellite doesn't show when it's cold. But like the fact that this is year-round ice, crazy, right? The fact that if we look around one of these cities, let's go to Igarka. This isn't a city. It's not going to have any street view. Damn it, there's just this. Oh, I can't even go to that apparently. But if we look around here, you'll see that it is in fact an incredibly cold place. Imagine with me Siberia. Do you imagine Siberia as being warm? That's the thing. So obviously very distinct in terms of weather, very distinct in terms of culture. I mean, it goes without saying that the Russian people's native are very different to otherwise, and so that is north of Asia. Then we've got the south of Asia, I've already mentioned. Then we've got the Middle East, which we can just call West Asia. But even call it, this part of Asia is so distinctly different to the rest of Asia that it feels weird to call it anything Asia. The Middle East is the globally accepted term for anywhere from Iran to Turkey to Saudi Arabia, Yemen, and Oman. Like, these are people who are not only generally Muslim, generally are very unstable, let's say. They used to be under one big empire, but now they're very fractured into different factions, let's say. And also this region of the world is very, very, very insanely hot. Again, that is North Asia, very insanely cold. This is West Asia, or the Middle East, very insanely hot. So we've got the Middle East, North Asia, South Asia, and then the Central Asia. Central Asian countries are very interesting in their history, partially because if we go by historical terms, they used to all be a part of the USSR, excluding Afghanistan. But yeah, the way you'll probably recognize them is like, ooh, they're all the stands. This is Afghanistan. This is Turkmenistan. This is Tajikistan, Uzbekistan, Kyrgyzstan, and Kazakhstan. Why did I switch from stan to stan halfway through? We'll never know. But as you can see, all of these countries are very interesting. And I want to mention Kazakhstan as being like, you know, people underestimate it and its size because it looks so tiny next to Russia, the world's largest country, and China, the world's third largest country by land area. But Kazakhstan is a huge country in its own right and with a huge everything of its own. So Central Asia really does have its own whole thing going on. It doesn't traditionally have the same access to the world as everyone else because Uzbekistan is the world's only, or one of the world's two only double landlocked countries. And all of these countries right here are landlocked in some way, having only access to, I think it's a lake, but it's called a sea because it's international. They have access to other countries, but they don't have access to international waters, to the oceans on which the world trade is conducted. So they have a very different relationship with the world that you might expect from that. Then we've got East Asia, so China, North Korea, South Korea, Japan, the Philippines, Taiwan. You can make some broad comment about something looks here. I'm going to avoid it for the sake of not being too offensive in my geography-based video. But you can also make the much bigger comment that, like, this is the part of Asia that is doing most economically successfully currently. Japan is the world's third largest economy. North Korea and South Korea, North Korea and South Korea. South Korea is doing incredibly well economically. North Korea is it does exist, and then China is of course the world's second largest economy. So this is the economic powerhouse of Asia and indeed the world. Even Taiwan, which is very fractured politically, is doing incredibly well on a per capita basis, and this means that like this is the very successful part of Asia. It's one of the parts of Asia where it's parts of Asia where like European colonialism was widespread, not really there too. So it's got an interesting story there. Like they had more of a trade-based relationship for the most part. Again, for the most part, I know I'm British. Don't worry. You don't have to tell me about the weird British colonies and that one weird German colony or whatever. I get it. They existed, but the whole country was never a widespread colony, like you saw in Southeast Asia, our final point of the model here. So Southeast Asia is, I would say, kind of similar to East Asia in some ways, but the climate is hugely different. Whereas, you know, like Beijing, for instance, has a very kind of a similar to European or North American style climate. Like it gets cold and then it gets warm. The Southeast Asia, because of how close it is to the equator and because of the tropical, I don't understand entirely. That's not the part of geography I enjoy, okay? But like, they have very tropical climates, which make it very, very, very humid and also pretty consistently hot year round. So that affects a lot of what's going on in this region. Because of the advent of air conditioning and many other, actually, they love air conditioning here too, but also because of that advent and many of the things around it, Southeast Asia is a very, 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 I guess on the up and up region of the world. I mean, if you look at Malaysia and Singapore and Thailand, and you know, like these are some of the most successful countries in terms of their growth rates. And also, it has to be worth mentioning that this is one of the largest bits and one of also the most varied inside of it. The very far reaches of Indonesia are hugely different to Myanmar, which are hugely different to Vietnam, and so yeah, you get the kind of division even within the region, but this is Asia divided into regions. That's the hardest one to do. Maybe we shouldn't have tackled it first, but let's also talk about the fact that, hey, there are other continents that are hard to divide, and one of the ones that is always most shocking to bring up is Europe, because here's a map that makes the British Isles very special. I know, I am a UK citizen making the UK to seem special. On the internet, this is a prime sin, like, oh, I said prime because I saw the prime meridian. This is a capital sin because, you know, it's not special. But there is a little bit of a weird thing with Europe that, again, there is a mostly historical division between West and East that people use that is very offensive to people from the west of the East. Poland, Czech Republic, Slovakia, and Hungary generally consider themselves to be Central European as opposed to Eastern European. They find that label to be offensive because they associate Eastern European, you know, like Eastern European is the one of the few of these labels that is generally considered to be only used negatively, like sometimes geographically and sometimes negatively. And that's kind of the scoop right there. And in fact, Eastern Europe is sometimes viewed so negatively that one of the shocking things for a lot of Americans, my girlfriend included, she's from the United States of America, and she was shocked by the fact that it is generally accepted in the UK that the largest swath of racism is not directed to people from some other faraway continent like you might expect, and like the American model is perhaps known for on the internet, but instead like the largest recipient of racism in the UK, or if you can even want to call it that, is Eastern Europe. And that's a weird thing to me, even again, like even my African friend, literally from Zimbabwe, is like, yeah, that they're the people that definitely deal with the craziness of like a lot of things. There's a very distinct like us versus them thing in that. And again, this is something you don't understand when you just think, oh yeah, Europeans. Everyone from Europe is European. But again, people all the way from Russia, you know, like, have a nice day, is very different to someone from Portugal or someone from Iceland. Again, the reaches of how different it is. But one of the things I want to mention here is that like Greece, Italy, Spain, and Portugal, again, kind of by climate, but mostly by actually, you know, let's just be honest, the real link here is climate. There's a little bit of history and how like, ooh, Greek Empire and Italian Empire, and I think the Spanish were be converted to Islam at that point. But basically, like, if you look at the various Southern European countries, they're defined partially by their extreme, they're much hotterness than everywhere else. So Spain has the siestas, and also all of them are kind of known as, you wouldn't call it lazy, but also, yeah, they're known as like lazier countries, but not in like not in the I guess I was gonna say not in an offensive way, but like, how can you call someone lazy in not an offensive way? There's a certain stereotype that things are laid back there, if you were to put that in a more positive way. So then you have Northern Europe, Scandinavia, which is realistically, because Northern Europe includes Iceland, Finland, etc. This is just the Nordic countries. The Nordic countries are incredibly wealthy on a per capita basis. They're incredibly happy on a per capita basis, and also they're kind of defined by their temperature as well. It is incredibly cold, even in the southern points of Norway or Iceland or Finland around parts of the year, and it's argued that some of the reasons that they're such successfully socially cohesive societies that also know how to keep their distance from each other is that, like, yeah, if you don't know how to live with each other in a country like Spain, it's fine. If you don't know how to live with each other in a country like Iceland, one of you dies, and then obviously that kind of contributes to that. I don't know how true that is. It's just a fun way to explain. Northern Europe has some of the best social security systems, but also some of the most successful economies via very successful business things. And so, yeah, that, like, generally speaking, there's nowhere in Europe where you can say, oh, we'll be like the Sweden or the Norways of the world. People are like, oh, I don't want to be like Sweden or Norway. whereas that's not so true for, you know, a Bosnia. You don't want to be. No one's compared positively to Bosnia or to even realistically Greece. Besides in climate, but if these are the countries that everyone is positively favored towards. So then there is Western Europe. France, Germany, Belgium, Netherlands, Luxembourg. These are the founding members of the EEC, which later became the EU. It actually started as the European Coal and Steel Community, but you don't care about that now. Even though France and Germany have traditionally been the countries at war in Europe, the two axes of power amongst most of the European wars, they do actually share more in common than they have apart. The biggest one is the fact that the Roman Empire, when it split into three, when Charlemagne united, I don't think this was Roman actually. I think this was like post-Roman Empire. Oh, how embarrassing. I guess it's like start of the Holy Roman Empire, but that wasn't so Roman. But basically, when the empire fell, it fell into three bits. The west of it vaguely turned into France, and they started speaking a different language, to the east of it, which vaguely fell to Germany, and most of the middle is what nowadays is Switzerland, Belgium, Netherlands, etc. It's more complex than that, but like, there is a great historical link between them, as well as a geographic link, and as a result, Western Europe is generally the wealthier bits of Europe, especially Germany being the fourth largest economy in the world. Boom, there we go. So the reason that the British Isles is in red dots right here is because we're special and we don't fit into a classification. So yeah, no, what it actually is depending on the context, you'd either say Northern Europe by like geography, like it's basically Northern Europe, but in terms of history, it's Western Europe. It was one of the staunch NATO allies that were fighting against the Iron Wall or whatever, or maybe on the wrong side of it if you're depending on your point of view in history. But like, yeah, the British Isles are Ireland and the UK generally go to the same team depending on the context. Is it weather? Push north. Is it like history? Push west. And so that is the simplest way there. But even both those terms feel a little bit off. But I'm British, so I guess if you might be like, you just think you're so special. And yeah, I do think I'm so special. How about that? So next up here, from the three major continents, we've got Africa. I don't want to spend too long on Africa. I just want to mostly say like, hey, Africa, people think of as a huge homogenous continent, and it's really problem-filled to me because if you look at countries like Algeria, Libya, and Egypt, these are very successful countries. They are not great by European or you know, like they are middle of the road countries in terms of income. And in Algeria's case, I think they're like the 20th wealthiest in the world. They have a healthy military. They have great relationships with most of the world. Like Algeria is a very successful country that happens to be in Africa. Same with Morocco, etc. But even when you look at the countries like the least successful, like even when you look at West Africa, and you might think like, oh yeah, Togo or Ghana or Nigeria. That's I saw an advert where like there was a really young emaciated child trying to get some water from a well. That's not most of the people who live here. Most of the people who live here live in some form of settlement. So if we go to like Abuja, the capital of Nigeria, and we look around like oh, they even have a street view here. Most of Africa does not have a street view. But if we look around even a random place, it's not going to be like this incredible place, but you can still see like, oh yeah, this doesn't look hugely different than you're probably expecting, right? So if we go back to our map right here, I would say North Africa is maybe by link to, again, Roman Empire, etc., is generally the wealthiest, but also the least usable terrain-wise, because did you know most of North Africa, in fact, the big natural barrier between North Africa and the rest of Africa is just the endless Sahara Desert. There's just not much of usable land over here, and you can see that when you look at the map, like, oh yeah, there's almost all the civilization is in the north. Is that offensive? That's probably not offensive. It's the internet. Everything's offensive if you take it the wrong way and you believe in yourself. I believe in you, internet. You can be offended at anything. But anyway, with that said, that's North Africa. Generally very successful countries, especially Egypt, especially Algeria, especially Morocco. Then we got South Africa, which is as a country pretty honestly is again kind of just high income country. It is generally even considered to be the richer countries, the West even, more economically developed countries is a term that is used to describe it. So that's kind of fun. Then we've got Namibia. So Namibia is also kind of wealthy. Same with Botswana. The rest of this, I would say, is just kind of geographically looped into Southern Africa. I feel like South Africa is such an annoying term to describe a portion of a continent because it also, you know, whose idea was it to name a country South Africa? Badly named countries, but we've gone on that rant before. Then we've got the east of Africa, which isn't doing so great outside of Ethiopia. I mean, Somalia is Somalia, Eritrea is Eritrea. Come on, guys. Djibouti, I want to love Djibouti, but it's never. Yeah, again, like, so East Africa's got its problems. And then in terms of, like, where is the actual problem of Africa, rather than thinking of Africa as being, like, that continent with the problems, the center of Africa is generally what you're talking about. I mean, countries like Chad, you know, it's funny because there is a country with, you know, there are the Virgin Islands that are, in fact, not virgin by most development standards besides size. And then there is Chad, which is very much not Chad by most international development metrics. We've got Central African Republic, the Democratic Republic of the Congo. We've just got a lot of countries with not a huge amount of many good things going on. In fact, Democratic Republic of the Congo is not only the third poorest nation on Earth by GDP, but also it's not only is it war-torn, not only does it have a really tragic history, not only is it very poor, but also it is just very poorly put together in terms of like where you would put a country. Also, the landscape is very hard to work. Basically, it's not a if you were trying to start a country, you wouldn't start it here. And with the history and the blah blah blah, it's not great. There's a lot of very sad things about it. And you know what? We could talk about those sad things, but rather than talking about sad history, I'm here to talk about subcontinents. So that's why West Africa is, I would say, the up and up. North Africa, already up. Southern Africa is a weird mix, and then East Africa is like mostly very scary problem-filled, besides Ethiopia. Boom, we got that covered, out of the way. So with that said, this map doesn't have Sudan divided into two. How very interesting. Next up, we've got the Americas. So how do you divide the Americas up? Honestly, it's very hard. I've got this map as my fun reference, like, wow, this is how you divide South America by language. But honestly, I think even finding a good map to explain it is very hard. I would say North America, the easiest way is saying the United States, then the rest of America, or you'd say the United States and Canada, and then the rest of North America. The United States is, of course, the world's wealthiest country. Canada is a very well-off country. Like, these two countries are a stark contrast to Central America and the Caribbean, so that's why there's a big difference there. But rather than just saying it and rather than doing that, here's how I would culturally divide the Americas. Look at this. MS Paint, it's coming back. So how would I divide that culturally? If I had to divide it into subcontinents, realistically speaking, you're picking somewhere about... honestly, you're picking somewhere pretty far east, and you're saying, like, this is the east coast of America. That also includes east coast of Canada. Just like something like that. That is like the East Coast, New World kind of vibe. Then you've got something like, oh yeah, this is the West Coast kind of thing. That also includes Alaska, because I guess that's a frontier, so it works. And also Hawaii. There we go. Great. Boom. So then we got this as a region, the West Coast kind of thing. Then we've got the big, overwhelming center where it's not connected to much over there. And then we've got like the Caribbean. And then we got like Central America. That is the way. This beautiful map right here is how I would divide North America into 5 regions. South America is much more complex because it basically already does itself. I would be like, okay, so there is this big. Again, if we're not using countries because we don't have to, it's decided. I'm making my own rules right here. Then I'd be like, the Amazon rainforest. There's just this big land. I can't even properly pinpoint it on a map. I'll be honest with you, but it's not very usable by anyone. And we're chopping it down. We're doing our best to make the Amazon rainforest habitable for humans. We're doing a good job as humans. We're getting there. Also, I guess I should mention, a lot of South Americans do not like when you call South America South America. South America is just America. It is America. I am from America too. I do not like when you say, I do not know, I am from South America, but I have Russian accent. I misunderstand how Europeans work because I no watch IBX Toycat video about how Russia is in Eastern Europe, but most people from Brazil come from the eastern side, the western side of Europe. Now I understand. I watch video. I do more appropriate Portuguese accent. So anyway, that said, this is Brazil right here, and so this is like, again, basically its whole own thing. It's weird to say that, but you kind of have to. So let's grab my little brush again. Let's be like this. Oh, this is a weird brush. This is like its own thing. Oh, no, wait, that's not Brazil. This is like whole own thing. Then I'd say Chile and Argentina are like the successful batch, like of the ones. So I'd be like Chile and Argentina, it's its own little section. And then I'd be like, I guess the rest. Honestly, South America is such a hard continent to divide by any metric, and by a lot of metrics you could just argue, it's all one big glob. But yeah, that is South America. At one point, one of the world's most successful empires. Maybe not so much these days. I like this map to just explain that, like, everyone there is Spanish, besides the one Portuguese country, the one French country, the one which is just France, by the way, the one Dutch country, and the one English country. So maybe this is a great one. You prefer that too. But finally, we have but one more continent, which is Australia. So Australia divides, here's the actual map of how you would divide it. There's, it's generally divided by the island chains. This, for whatever reason, there's just a huge number of islands in the Pacific, and we're like, we'll just count those all as Australia, because Australia is pretty small. It needs some land to be added to it. So there's Melanesia, Micronesia. Micronesia has a country called Micronesia. Also have lots of other countries, including, if I'm not mistaken, the a couple of US territories. Then we've got Polynesia, which includes both Hawaii and New Zealand. However, the native people from New Zealand are Polynesian, if I'm not mistaken, the Maori. But the large majority of people who aren't Maori are from Australasia, which is all of this. I think that's why, like, the islands are Polynesian islands, but the people are whatever. It gets confusing, and there's already overlapping terms everywhere. Try and describe Australia. Try and divide it into pieces. Honestly, if you're going on a population basis, if we consider that people have to live somewhere for us to care into dividing it, all of these sectors right here have less than 1 million people. Not like, oh yeah, like there's almost 1 million people in each of these. There's like 300,000 people. There's barely 1 million people living in all in both of these, all of these islands combined. Like, you have to really get into like Papua New Guinea and Australia and New Zealand, where the vast majority of the continent's population live. So if we're talking about those three, I would say divide them into the three. Boom, we've got the easiest way to divide the continent. But then you kind of need to divide Australia too. Western Australia, people from Perth, very different to people from the east of Australia, even though it's all the same. Honestly, the whole keeping Australia together thing is very different. And I've only been to Sydney, Melbourne, and Perth, and seen the difference in how it's all put together. Again, because Perth is just the only city for so long. You're so isolated in Perth. It's insane, the isolation you have. So, yeah, that's one of the things you have to keep in mind here. And the other thing is, like, oh yeah, I guess every extremity of this continent is just very bizarrely put together. And the reason, in case you're curious as to why, like, Perth is so isolated from the rest of it, is because I want to say navigating the waters under South Australia is very hard. So knowing if this was even the same continent was hard to do for a lot of history. And so part of that is like, oh yeah, most of the settlements are like where they could do so and where it was smart to do so. Perth is just kind of like, oh yeah, it was the first thing we did. But it's basically not on the same continent as the rest of these. Actually, in fact, to put this in comparison, Perth to Sydney, well, Canberra is the capital, but like Perth to Sydney, the largest population centre, is 3,200 kilometres. For fun comparison, and you better believe I like fun comparison, I live closer to. We're gonna have to pick our city carefully. Like, let's pick the Middle East, and we get 3,400. Damn, I live closer to Istanbul. There we go. Istanbul is closer to the UK and to London, or even to Dublin, than Perth is to Sydney. Actually, not just for fun here. Sri Lanka to Istanbul, which is also in Asia, is almost 3 times further away than London is from Istanbul, even though I live at the very edge of Europe, going to the start of Asia, whereas Sri Lanka is in the middle of Asia. Does that help you understand sizes? Does any of this video help you understand anything? Because you know what, there's one thing I missed. I said I'd explain all the continents and all the subcontinents. So if we're dividing these continents by the people to help you understand culture, what about the Antarctica? Here you go. Here's Antarctica divided by culture. All the Norwegian heritage, you know, the thousands of years of Norwegians and passing traditions onto their sons are from here. The Australians, again, a country with a rich, you know, many centuries of delightful exploration of the continent. Australia's right there. France with its, you know, these New Zealand, one of the oldest nations on Earth. It's millennia old. Has this huge claim over here. And then there's the British claim, the Argentinian claim. Basically, whatever. You don't divide Antarctica because there's no people to divide. And I think that's beautiful. Of all the continents on Earth, the only one that's, like, pretty accurate to describing, like, culture by not dividing into more is Antarctica. And you know what the worst bit is? If you look under the ice in Antarctica, it's actually just an archipelago. It's actually not a continent. The only one continent that's consistent isn't even a continent. And you know what's sad about that? It's sad that we think it is anyway. So this video has been fun, I think you'll find. Yeah, did you have fun? If you didn't, then you're wrong. You better go back and rewatch until you enjoy it. Because we went around all the regions of Earth and help you understand that, like, yeah, someone from the Middle East is very different to someone from Japan. Someone from, you know, yeah, Lithuania has a lot of differences to someone from Brazil, who has a lot of differences to someone from New Zealand. Was that clear? I hope that was clear. But no, this video was fun, and so are you, because I'll see you all next time. Unless I don't. I don't know. I think I'm in Mexico as this video goes up, so I'll see you all on the other side of the coin. Bye.